What's up, everyone? Hope you are doing great. And let's start with our first story titled 23andMe revealed my mom's 59 female 11-year affair on my dad, 59 male, which resulted in a heartbreaking tragedy. This is going to be very long. Sorry about that. My parents were high school sweethearts. They started dating when they were both 16. They dated for 4 years, and then my mom got pregnant with my oldest sister, 39 female. Then my dad did the right thing. He dropped out of college. He was on the path to medical school. It was his dream to become a doctor. Married mom and started working at a desk job at my grandpa, age 80, company. My parents later had 3 other kids, my older sisters, 35 female, 33 female, and me, 30 female. My childhood was pretty normal. Dad worked, mom stayed at home taking care of me and my sisters. Dad was always very present in our lives. I and my sisters were always daddy's girls. We were very attached to him. I was particularly close to him. We had a really deep bond. When I was 13, I was diagnosed with leukemia, and he never left my side. He held my hand during chemo sessions during the whole time. He consoled me when I had my first heartbreak and assured me that everything would be all right. He taught me how to drive. He walked me down the aisle 3 years ago when I married my husband and told me that was one of the happiest days of his life. I was always his favorite as well. My parents were happy. I never saw them fighting or anything like that. My dad took my mom on date nights at least twice a week. He spoiled her a lot, and they seem really in love. My parents were the perfect couple. Everyone saw them as something flawless, an example of true love. My mom was my dad only one, and dad was mom only one. It was something that he was very proud of that. It was really special for him. I felt really bad when I lost my virginity to my ex-boyfriend and realized that I couldn't ever have the same thing as my parents. My dad's mom died during birth, and grandpa raised him as a single parent. He never remarried or dated anyone after her death as far as I know. Grandpa refused to talk about grandma. It was very painful for him. He never met anyone from grandma's side of the family, and grandpa didn't talk much about her. In June, I bought a 23andMe kit for me and dad. I thought that would be cool to see if he had any relatives on grandma's side, and we did the test together. We did the tests. I found out that I had 2 half-brothers and that we shared the same father. We were honestly confused. Me and dad didn't understand that. We thought that this was a mistake. When we told mom about this, she froze. She started crying. We pressured her a bit more, and that's when she confessed about her 11-year-old affair with one of my dad's friend. He was our neighbor at a certain point in our lives, and he was in the same class as dad and mom. I remember seeing him around when I was a kid. He was a close friend of the family. Dad was in denial. He thought that it was a mistake. My sisters and I ended up doing the test at a hospital. 3 days later, the results arrived. No one matched with dad. He was not our father. For the first time in 30 years of my life, I saw my dad cry. Not a normal cry, sobbing like a kid. We tried to talk to him. He got up, grabbed his keys, and left. We tried to call like 100 times, and he didn't answer. My mom was having a panic attack, so my oldest sister took her to the hospital. We didn't hear from dad for 3 whole days. We searched for him everywhere. Eventually, my grandpa found him at the family fishing cabin. He died. You know what I mean. He didn't leave any notes or anything like that. In 9 days, I discovered that my mom had an 11-year affair, that my dad wasn't my biological father, and that he had died. Again, you know what I mean. It broke me. His funeral was another mess. My dad's side of the family got into a fight with my mom's side of the family. My grandpa and uncles ended up kicking my mom out of the funeral. It was a disaster. The first time I saw my grandpa crying as well, it was something I wish I hadn't seen. He entered a really deep depression after that. He barely speaks anymore. After the funeral, neither I nor my sisters could look at mom anymore. We just couldn't. I can look my sisters in the eye as well, and I blame myself every day for suggesting that freaking stupid test. Thanksgiving this year was the first time we didn't celebrate as a family in 33 freaking years. I can't look at my mother anymore. She spends her days staring at a wall. Her side of the family is pressuring me and my sisters to reestablish contact, but I just can't. My sisters are also not speaking to her since the funeral. I found out that I am pregnant last week. I and my husband have been trying for the last 2 years, and I am not even happy. I feel hopeless. I feel broken. Sometimes I start to think about dad, and my heart looks like it is going to explode. I miss him so much. Has anyone been in a similar situation? How do I survive this freaking guilt? How the hell do I move past this? Any advice is really appreciated. This is one of the saddest stories. The poor guy gave up his dream for a cheating witch and someone else's kids. Got to know that at 60, after wasting his entire life on a lie. Any man would go crazy. There was an update, but unfortunately it was removed. Summary of the update is that the AP, her biological father, died 10 years ago. She got in contact with one of her half-brothers, and it turns out the bio-dad was a cheating deadbeat who didn't care about his sons. The mother was institutionalized for a few weeks after having a mental breakdown. Apparently, she's now basically gone mute and spends her entire day staring blankly at a wall and crying at her husband's grave. She still won't leave the poor guy alone in his grave. And now the second story. Has anyone divorced years after the affair? I've been a long-time poster on a different account, mainly regarding reconciliation and healing, but my wife and I share all social media, and I'm looking for a different perspective. I've been waffling back and forth on what I want to do. One minute I'm set on divorce, the next minute I convince myself otherwise. I'll write a post, take it down, then write it again. I'm pretty much a closet disaster. Sincere apologies for the length of this, and I can include backstory if necessary, but my wife, 36 female, and I, 38 male, have now been married for 13 years. We have 2 kids, 9 male, 7 female. She had an affair, both emotional and physical affair, with a coworker about 5 years ago now, and lasted about 6 months. I stayed because our kids were so young, and my wife was deeply remorseful, begged and begged to reconcile. She cut off contact with the affair partner, left her former place of employment. We started marriage counseling, and we've both been seeing a therapist of our own, and she's been very patient and understanding with me over the years, and not just in the short term, but even now. As far as reconciliation goes, I guess she's been as good as a betrayed partner can ask for. She's really invested in being a better person and understanding what led her to the betrayal. Given all of the horror stories that many wayward spouses put their betrayed through, I can't complain given that this is the path I've chosen. Recently, I've been commenting on this, but I've tried and tried. In marriage counseling and meeting with my own therapist over the years, I've read books, been seeking support online as aforementioned. I've done everything I can find both online and in person to help me recover, but I just don't feel the same about my wife. I haven't since the day I found out about the affair. I haven't been honest about this with my wife because I don't want to hurt her. I always reassure her and say the right things because I just don't want her to feel the pain that I feel. I know it's pathetic. Early on in the reconciliation process, we both were taking the correct steps and making progress, I suppose, but she was overwhelmed by guilt. As time went on, I just kept having such a hard time with the affair. I'd continue to try and express my true feelings to my wife, but she started to break down, sometimes shut down, have these emotional panic attacks, sob, apologize, then sob. It just became too much, so I kind of stopped expressing my hurt a few years back. I actually felt guilty continually talking about my pain, and I guess I just naively thought feelings would come back and eventually all would be great again. Much of what I kept reading and hearing was to just give it time. But there's no promise that any joy or normalcy will return, and now I'm reaching the point where I finally realize that it never will. I can't look at her the same. I can't hold her or kiss her the same way. It just hurts my soul. Everything feels stained or ruined. These feelings were strong when I learned of the affair, then slightly faded as we threw ourselves into our very young kids at the time. Some hysterical bonding occurred, of course, but recently in the past couple of years, my pain and anguish have grown back stronger and stronger. I went through such a long period of self-hate, of blaming myself, losing all self-confidence. Depression grew and grew. In thinking about it, I suppose not much has changed, really. I'm still in that headspace a lot of the time. But I was continually told that the faults, problems, were my wife's and not my own, that she was the broken one. Well, you could tell me that 10 million times, and it's not going to make me feel any less miserable. She chose him and only came back to me after getting caught. That's what runs through my head constantly, regardless of what she says. My therapist insists I'm doing all of the right things, but I just feel that my path to happiness might mean divorcing my wife and moving on. I fully understand that she chooses to be with me now, but will I ever know her true motivations for that? She could be lying to me and staying so as not to hurt me further, maybe just to keep our family together. Maybe she still privately longs for this other man, and she could be telling the truth. It kills me to not know. Yes, she's with me now, but does she want to be? I mean, to her, she probably believes that I'm healing, that I'm returning to my old self, and that I choose her again too. But she doesn't know my inner truth either. I suppose this could be the case if there's an affair or not. Maybe I'm just in my own head as usual. I hate what her affair has done to the peace of our marriage. I hate it with every fiber of my being. I love my wife, but she hurt me so deeply and so painfully. It just festers so often. I want to be happy, but I want her to be happy too. A while back, she asked me if I'll ever treat her the way I used to, and I tiptoed around my answer, lying again to protect her from the same pain she caused me. But if I'm being 100% honest with myself and with my wife, the answer to that question is, and has been undoubtedly, no. I won't ever treat her the same way again because she's not the same person to me any longer. That's not fair to either one of us, right? Intimacy has never been the same. It takes everything in me to not constantly imagine her with the other man. The things she did, said, the sound she'd make, things maybe she did for him but not me, conversations they had, things she said about me, etc. It's horribly haunting. I lose my erection at times, which is so incredibly embarrassing. This in turn just sends me back into the mental gymnastics, as I'm sure her AP never had issues. Another way he was better than me that probably keeps her longing for him. Man, everything I read insisted therapy would help with this, but it never has. I keep thinking I can just continue the facade and let her believe I'm fine, but I really can't do this. It's not fair to anyone. I have to face reality. Time isn't making things better. It's only getting worse. I thought I was doing the right thing by staying, by trying to work through things, but I realize now I'm throwing away so much of my own soul and damaging my kids' and wife's happiness along the way. I can't be the person that I used to be around my wife. I've tried for years now, and I know it's going to get worse, not better. So, has anyone tried to reconcile but divorced years later? Was it the right move? Are you happier now? How did the kids handle it? I'm just scared either way. I hardly get a full night's sleep since her affair. I can probably count them all on one hand in the past few years. I just can't find peace. I'm losing myself piece by piece, and I need help. I need a release. It just always hurts, but I'm so afraid of ending my marriage. So I just grin and bear it day after day. My wife has put in a ton of work to remedy this and fix what's broken in her, but she's the one that destroyed me. Why am I enduring this to protect her? I don't know. I'm just so scared of what divorce will do to all of us. Naturally, it's my kids' futures that has me constantly second-guessing everything. I just need to hear that we'll be okay. Would prefer to hear from people reconciling or have had failed reconciliations, but any advice is welcomed. Thanks in advance. OP is already miserable, and divorce won't make things any worse. It seems like OP never got closure. Whenever he expressed his feelings, she shut him down by crying, forcing him to keep it all inside. The kids already sense their parents' unhappiness. OP is clinging to the sunk cost fallacy. And now to the update. It's been awful, but I finally feel free. I almost feel guilty posting this. The first days of this week have been very painful. So many tears, very hard conversations, trying to explain to the kids. It takes every ounce of energy that I have to not comfort my wife and tell her everything is going to be okay. But doing so would only hurt both of us far worse in the long run, and I know that now. Wife had an affair 5 years ago, and we've been reconciling. But Sunday night I sat her down and just unloaded my every vice, every pain, everything that's built up over the past couple of years. My previous post explains where I'm at. It took me that entire day to get the courage up to talk about these things, and I was actually convincing myself to avoid the conversation until fate stepped in. The four of us, we have 2 kids, were in the living room playing with the kids, and our daughter was studying me while I sat on the couch. She turned to my wife and asked, "How come Daddy is sad all of the time?" Hearing that snapped me into reality. If my 7-year-old noticed, well, I had to leave the room, but later that night we had the talk. Anyway, my wife knew what was coming, given my seriousness. She immediately broke down before I hardly said a word and started begging me not to divorce her. I honestly don't believe it's manipulation. I don't. She's been devastated by her own actions and guilt has overwhelmed her at times. She hates herself at times, apologizes so regularly for her affair, but regardless, I shut her down immediately this time and told her to stop, that she doesn't get to sob her way out of this conversation this time. I need to say what I need to say, and she needs to hear me, not just listen, but hear me. She was a bit shocked by how firm I was, but sat back and listened as I basically just read verbatim my last post on Reddit. To my wife's credit, she didn't interrupt me, she didn't try to interject at all. She listened to everything. She cried the entire time, but she listened, and this time she heard me. She asked if I wanted a divorce, and I said that I was fairly certain that I do, but that we should try a separation for a while so I can get my head straight. It was so awful, just constant crying, sometimes just her, sometimes both of us. But she agreed to stay at her parents' house for a while since it's just minutes from where she works, and I'd stay home. Since it's summer, it'll be much easier with the kids, and they'll just spend some more time with Grandma and Grandpa, I guess. This started 2 nights ago. The kids don't understand, but accept that Mom is at Grandma and Grandpa's for a while. My wife started to bombard me with texts about how much she loves me and always has, very emotional texts. But, as hard as it was, I again insisted on minimal contact aside from the kids because I need this. And since then, she's been silent, but it's only been a day. We're going to split time with the kids each week, no dating anyone else of any sort, and we scheduled a check-in every Sunday night when we plan to exchange the kids to see where we're at with things. I also met with a lawyer, and aside from the house, everything is incredibly straightforward, it seems. Unless she contests, custody and assets will go 50-50 given how much we earn. We both have stable jobs and can make everything work. So I'm going to wait a while and see how I adjust, but I'll say this. For the first time since finding out about her affair, I feel free. I felt like I've been in a prison of despair for so long, constantly at odds with this haunting cloud of misery and hopelessness in the day-to-day. And as lonely and quiet as the house has been, I feel a peace that I can't explain. I slept through the night last night for the first time in so long. I woke up with energy for a change, and I feel alive. I actually feel a tiny morsel of hope now. It hurts a lot, but her affair shattered me, and I'm ashamed that it's taken me 5 years to finally follow through on what my heart has been telling me for so long. I feel empowered and guilty at the same time. Empowered because the chains of her affair aren't holding me down any longer, but guilty because I had to hurt her to achieve it, and I waited so long to listen to myself. It's only been a couple of days, but I won't allow any more of my soul to dissolve away. Sincere thanks to all who helped to get me onto this path. Alone, I might not have had the courage to do it. Best wishes to all of you who've experienced the same awful fate of infidelity. But if I can somehow overcome this after 5 years, so can you. OP, I'm glad you're finally at peace. Your wife may be remorseful, but she has to face the consequences of her actions. If she loves you as much as she says, she'll give you a clean divorce. And that's the end of today's saga. Dear viewers, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss out. Until next time. Bye-bye.